Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. Can you believe an international organization violating its own mandate and a country which prides itself on integrity, honesty, and commitment to ideals abets that crime, albeit unknowingly, maybe knowingly? United Nations is suffering from a plethora of organizations which are not functioning well. The recent coronavirus revealed the hollow working of WHO, which is more a handmaiden of China. United Nations human rights is composed of and controlled by those countries which have set a record in violating human rights. Some people may feel that in case such organizations are wound up, it would not only be financially useful, but might create a better atmosphere for the people. But human rights violation is known to everybody. Today I'm going to tell you about the horrible, horrible activity of United Nations organization which deals with the refugees. Now, every time there's a catastrophe, natural or man-made, there's a war, civil war, or a foreign aggression, people find it expedient to leave their earth and home. Some out of necessity, other out of opportunism. Some people have to leave because of the hate and the crime against them. The other come as quislings, as the part of the fifth column in the terrorists in the guise of refugees. And then when you are a refugee, you have all the sympathy of the world, and United Nations Rehabilitation Organization, Relief and Works Agency gives you relief and you live a luxurious life. Some countries go out of the way, like Canada, to make your life an earthly heaven. Furnished houses, facilities which are not even given to the citizens and the seniors of those citizens who have contributed to the growth of the country, like Canada does. But today, I'm talking about how Canada is aiding and assisting United Nations Relief and Works Agency, especially when UNRWA is violating its own mandate. As a matter of fact, one organization has started a petition urging the Canadian government to freeze its supports to this organization because this organization misleads donors about its activities and promotes terror activities. Don't be shocked, that's a reality, as I'll show you. One country, which is the object of ire, anger, resentment, the most innovative country in the world, Israel. That is supposed to be wiped off the map by Iran, by Hezbollah, by Palestinians, all these terrorist organizations. And they are being aided by UNWRA. And UNWRA, a large part of that is being funded by Canada. In January of this year, just 2 months back, today the 1st of March, Karina Gao, who is the Minister of our International Development, announced an investigation into the activities of UNWRA. And UNRWA, Relief and Works Agency, was seen to be using textbooks in the schools promoted by it. And those textbooks were promoting violence and wiping off Israel from the map of the world. Now, why should UNRWA do it? As a matter of fact, the whole thing smacks of partisanship, of hate, and everything. The UNRWA is using textbooks that, as I said, promote violence, hatred, to the extent that they want to wipe off Israel from the map of the world. And imagine it. The minister orders an investigation and it's found to be correct, this allegation. If that was alone, it wouldn't be shocking enough. It would be shocking, but not stunning. And lo and comes the Commissioner General of UNRWA, Philip Lazzarini. And he says, well, yes, I agree that we are using textbooks which promote hatred, which promote terror, which promote enmity against Israel, but we did not print them. We are just distributing them. Can anything be more ridiculous? I don't think so. Now, this group, which was set up by the government of Canada, by the Minister for International Development, shows that this statement of the Commissioner General is incorrect. In fact, they have not changed the books as they promised. They continue to use the material to erase Israel from its maps, describe city as Ramallah in Israel as occupied, and Palestinians. And they encourage children to wage jihad against the occupation and the enemy who is occupying it. The word enemy, jihad, occupation show the trend that is being caused. Now, students are not merely given false information, but there is clear encouragement of terror. Among their assignments, which was seen by the Commission, are the conjugation of phrases such as pieces of corpses, jihad is a road to glory, and walking with a limp excuse its owner from jihad. Still more disturbing, some of the violent material was not adapted from Palestinian Authority textbooks, but was created by United Nations Relief and Works Agency itself. And this is the tragedy, that the group which opposes Israel is not so poison spreading as UN organization is. They are more loyal than the king, or shall I say more criminal than the people who are really suffering, if they are. Now, what has government of Canada done? The government of Canada has pledged $90 million in December only. And if they committed $90 million in December, and in January they came to know that this is going to be, in fact, promoting terror activities, and Canada can be victim of those terror activities. We have seen how Canada suffered at the hand of Khalistani terrorists. when Kanishka was blown and more than 300 lives, Canadian lives, were lost. And still, the government of Canada has not withdrawn that funding. And the reality is that there have been fresh revelations, and they demonstrate beyond all doubt that the lapses are not a one time error, and that UNRWA cannot be trusted to monitor its own record. UNRWA has always said that they have no choice but to teach the curriculum provided by the Palestinian Authority. First is why. Why? It's just like saying, well, look here, we have got to sell the drugs because we get the supply from the drug cartels. If something is bad, why should you do it? If it's poisonous, why give to the people? The next step may be that they'll say, okay, we are going to supply poison, potassium cyanide, or sarin gas, because that has been provided by the Palestinian Authority. Would they do it? They won't. So why supply the poison and the hatred? These are the million-dollar questions which have not been answered. And government of Canada is funding this taking. Would government of Canada permit any school in Canada to use such a material? And if not, why should Canadians be asked to help finance such hatred abroad? Now look at Canadian people. They don't hate anybody, by and large. There might be some ruffled feathers, but they're very humanistic in attitude, very compassionate. And this thought of wiping a country from the map of the world would never cross their mind. And those people are funding the government of Canada. I mean, so the government of Canada, the federal government doesn't pay from the money provided by the MPs of the Liberal Party. These funds are given by Canadian citizens. Are the Canadian citizens not then responsible for funding this promotion of terrorist activities? And that too without their knowing, without their knowledge. The American Revolution took place when the cry was raised, no taxation without representation. Here, representation is there, but taxation is there. But how the money is used in promoting criminal activities almost. What are you doing? You remember in 2016, US Congress has demanding that the agency provide the actual number of Palestinian refugees, which they have not given till today. This organization was established in 1948 to assist 750,000 Palestinians who had left Israel. Since then, this organization has become a handmaiden of the Palestinians, a promoter of the Palestinian cause, and it funds 5 million refugees. Now, how do 700 refugees become 5 million? Is there any arithmetic? You would be amazed at the absolutely absurd logic. They say the son of a refugee is a refugee, the daughter of a refugee is a refugee, and so on. So, third generation of those refugees is still deemed a refugee. Refugee is a person who comes and is transplanted and maybe a couple of years. After that, he has to live a normal life. But here, since 1948, the third and the fourth generation is still deemed to be a refugee and gets all the benefits. Majority of these people have never left their home. Refugees who leave his home and goes to a new place needs help to settle down, to become accustomed to the new habits, new culture, find avenues for the livelihood. But here, these people have been living there for 3 generations. and still they are deemed refugees. They have never left their home since they were born in the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, Eastern Jerusalem. And do you know how much UNWRA is spending on that? $1.3 billion annually. Why is that? In the same organization, while the refugees in other countries are deemed refugees only for a period of 1 to 3 years, here the Palestinian refugees are treated forever. And the UN defines Palestinian refugees to include all the descendants of the original refugees. And this is the only exception to the legal definition of refugees in the world. The nearly 1 million to 700 or 7.5 in 1948, their children, grandchildren are not considered refugees by the UN. And imagine, originally they did not belong to Israel. They belong to Jordan, Syria, Egypt, and Arab. They are all Arabs, basically. And they are not allowed to return home to these countries, which are their original countries. Unlike other refugees, possibly the Palestinian refugees are the only blessed refugees who have a complete organization to look after them. UNRWA. Palestinians are the only refugees whose number keeps on increasing exponentially every year. Is that logical? Is that reasonable? Or is it a sign of lunacy and an expression of death wish? Let's be very clear. Unlike United Nations High Commission on Refugees, this organization, UNRWA, does not seek to solve the Palestinian refugee problem. They are trying to perpetuate it as a permanent weapon, a political weapon against Israel. And as a matter of fact, this organization should be deemed a criminal organization. Its bosses should be prosecuted for promoting terrorism, and this organization needs to be banned. But would Canada, since I'm a Canadian, have the courage to say, okay, we are not going to fund anymore this sort of activity which goes against the Canadian values? This is a challenge to the Liberal government. Can they do it? I dare them to think about it. Thank you.